Good morning, committee members. The clerk has advised me we have a quorum, and the witnesses are all appearing in the room. We have 2 members appearing virtually. They have been sound tested and have been approved. So with that, I will call meeting number 136 of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities to order. As I indicated, today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to procedures adopted by the House of Commons. You have the choice, you have the option to participate in the official language of your choice by using translation services in the room. On the headset, those appearing virtually, click on the globe icon on the bottom of your surface, choose the official language of your choice. If there's an interruption, please get my attention by raising your hand. We'll suspend while it is being corrected. I would like to advise you too, those in the room with devices, please turn any alarms or whatever other noises come from your surfaces or mobile devices off so that it does not cause an issue for the translation services. Please, to get my attention, raise your hand in the room or use the raised hand symbol on your surface, and I will recognize you. Wait until I recognize you by name before you proceed. So that is basically the issues. The other part, I'm advised, please refrain from touching the boom on your mic because it does cause popping of sound. So this morning's HUMA meeting is together pursuant to Standing Order 81.5 and the motion that was adopted by the committee on September the 17th, 2024. The committee is commencing consideration of Supplementary Estimates B and Ministerial Priorities for the Return of Parliament and their mandates. With us today we have the Honourable Stephen McKinnon, Minister of Labour and Seniors. Is this your first opportunity before HUMA? I thought so. Welcome, Mr. Minister. And in the past, for those, we have sat at similar tables. So welcome to HUMA, Mr. Minister. With Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Wojo Zilonka. Ms. Elsie Ram, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Income Security and Social Development, and Mr. Gary Robertson, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Policy, Dispute Resolution and International Affairs. Mr. Minister, you have 5 minutes to give opening comments. The floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And good morning to all the members of the committee. You will understand, of course, that in view of the fact that it's the first time I appear before you, I hope that the members will show some indulgence towards myself as a minister. But I'd like to say that it's an honor for me to appear before your committee the first time as a Minister of Employment and Seniors since last July.
Safer because of this government. We've provided 10 days of paid sick leave per year, so no one has to choose between staying home sick and paying their bills. We're protecting gig workers against misclassification and wage theft. We banned the use of replacement workers during labor disputes, and that will be coming into force next year. And there's still more to come. We're implementing a new leave for parents welcoming a child through adoption and surrogacy, as well as a new 3-day paid leave for employees who face a pregnancy loss. And we are protecting the right to disconnect to help restore a much-needed balance between work and home life. We advanced one of the most significant changes to Canadian labour law in decades, banning replacement workers during strikes or lockouts. Replacement workers can prolong disputes, tip the scales at the bargaining table, and poison workplaces. We're proud to have put a stop to it. This government respects the collective bargaining process. This year, we successfully supported parties in negotiating new collective agreements. Now, it's not easy, and I look forward to the opportunity to talk more about this today with you and the members, Mr. Chair. But when parties put in the work at the table, negotiated agreements are possible and are always the best way forward. And I'm also proud of the work we've done for seniors. We've backed our seniors, helped make life more affordable, allowing them to age with dignity. We introduced the Canadian Dental Care Plan, with nearly 3 million seniors now enrolled and 1 million having received care. We increased the OAS for the most vulnerable seniors, those 75 and over. That's 3 million people receiving an extra $1,000 every year. We increased the GIS, le supplément de revenu garanti, and raised the earnings exemption so working seniors can keep more of what they earn. And we reversed the previous government's plan to raise the retirement age to 67, saving the retirements of 1 million seniors every year. Le travail se poursuit, Monsieur le Président. Et c'est
The
un
work
travail
continues, and it is work that I have the honor of undertaking. Last August, we announced the latest call for proposals for the New Horizons for Seniors program. Last year, some 900,000 seniors participated in 3,500 projects that were funded through the program. And finally, to keep seniors safe, we are investing in projects that will keep seniors safe, end mistreatment and the poverty of our seniors. In my province of Quebec, for example, poverty amongst seniors has dropped by 57% thanks to the investments that we made directly as a government. And so, Chair, I'm very, very proud of the work that we have done, that this government has done, that this Parliament has done for workers and seniors. I am more than pleased to say that I have built on the work of my predecessors in safeguarding Canadians. I'll stop here, Mr. Chair, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that the committee members may have. Thank you for your attention, and you're welcome today.
We'll open the floor for the first 6-minute round with Mr. Seaback. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, in the last 3 months, you've taken the unprecedented step of twice using Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code to ask the Canadian Industrial Relations Board to effectively take away the right to strike from workers, where they had to resume their duties. That's unprecedented in the history of the country. And it's been universally condemned by labour unions. In fact, Frank Morena, in an email to me, said, why should the government do the dirty work of bad employers? Now, there's also an issue with respect to a long-standing strike that's going on in Canada. I asked you a question about it in question period, and I've reached out to the union since question period, and they've said a couple of things. One, the members or the locals still have not heard anything from Minister McKinnon. And second, said, our members are holding out hope that labour laws are not just for big companies and corporations, and that the help comes before our members and their families are completely financially ruined. So that Unifor local has asked you to intervene. What I find really hard to understand is when unions are asking you not to intervene, you intervene. And when a union is actually asking you to intervene because we have an employer who is effectively union busting, trying to break this union took the unprecedented step of asking you to intervene, and they've heard crickets from you. So you intervene when unions don't want it, and you won't intervene when they want it. How can you rationalize this decision?
Well, I appreciate that question. I'll deal first with the Best Theratronics issue, the issue in the second part of your question. Indeed, that is an employer under federal jurisdiction because they produce nuclear devices, medical devices, and with a very high-skilled, important workforce, and whether or not those numbers are small or large, the situation that we have is indeed very aggravating, and I understand the members. I did meet with both Unifor and PSAC, who has members as well from that particular employer. We've made repeated attempts to communicate with the owner of that business. who has proven elusive, not only to union representatives but to us. That is a very aggravating situation when the federal labor minister calls upon an employer to discuss a labor stoppage and does not respond. So I can tell you today, and this has been true for many days and weeks now, that I've asked the department for options to deal with this situation. Not presenting oneself at the bargaining table and responding to good faith offers from employee representatives is not okay, cannot stand, and you can be certain, Mr. Seaback, that I'll be addressing it. With respect to 107 more generally, I would maintain that that was the most pro-labor decision possible in both instances, in the case of rail and in the case of ports. Canadian economy was bleeding hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars a day, and faced with more staggering losses. I had interventions from...
Sorry, Minister, I didn't ask you to rationalize your decision with respect to those two things, so I don't need to hear your rationalization.
Well, what are you asking me then?
My question was, right, why, when a union's asking you to intervene, you don't? And you've delivered more thin gruel today for this Unifor local. They've asked you to intervene. It's an unprecedented step for a union to ask a minister to make a referral. And you continue to use flowery words. I've asked my department for information and options. You've got lots of options. In fact, in the last 3 months, you've used Section 107 in an unprecedented fashion. Now you actually have the opportunity to benefit a group of workers who an employer is acting in incredibly bad faith and has been doing so for months. Mm-hmm. And I know you've received the information. They forwarded you the information about how this employer has called the workers lazy and is threatening to just never come to the table. He's not come to the table. Why won't you exercise your power to benefit this union when you're so easily available to exercise your power in other circumstances? That's the question.
Well, Mr. Seaback, I think I just answered that question. The fact is that we have a non-responsive owner. We have a situation where people have been out on strike for many months now. That is unfortunate and unacceptable in a world where the employer refuses to negotiate. So we are going to be addressing this situation.
As per your answer and question period, your answer today will provide very cold comfort for these workers who are facing a Christmas without a job.
Thank you, Mr. Seaback. We'll go to Mr. Kuzmarchuk for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be sharing my time with the MP, my colleague from London North Centre. Minister, a couple weeks ago, I had the honour of hosting you in Windsor, Essex. We had a chance to tour the Gordie Howe International Bridge, $6.4 billion investment on the part of this government. It is absolutely transforming our region, supercharging our region, and there's 16 million worker hours were committed by the incredible workers of our region to build not only the bridge but the ports of entry, which we got a chance to tour. I just wanted to ask you, Minister, these historic generational investments like the Gordie Howe Bridge that our government is making, what impact is it having on Canadian workers?
Well, the Gordie Howe Bridge is, as I think you and I discussed with the folks there, with the workers there on the occasion of our visit, gives me and should give all Canadians confidence that we can get big things done. This will be a trade-enabling, tourism-enabling enhancement to our economy, to our national economy, and obviously to the economy of southwestern Ontario. And I can only tip my hat. It's no surprise to me that responsible for this incredible achievement are the workers of Windsor, Essex, who have pointed the way for Canadians so many times by their hard work, by showing up and putting in the hours to create these nation-building projects. It's an incredible addition to the skyline in our country, and I think all Canadians should be proud, and I certainly hope they all go and visit Windsor, Essex to see this magnificent engineering and construction accomplishment, and spare a thought for those who have toiled over many, many hours, but I know proudly so, to build this incredible structure.
And Minister, I'm sitting next to my colleague from London North Centre that will be receiving a significant federal investment in the form of a battery plant in St. Thomas that, again, is completely revitalizing that community in southwestern Ontario. But of course, we know in Windsor, we also received the very first EV battery plant in Canada, largest auto investment in the history of this country in my region, the Next Star battery plant. It's already employing 2,000 construction workers. The first 500 workers that will be building batteries have already been hired. 2,500 workers will be building batteries for generations to come. You had a chance, or we had a chance to meet with the construction trades, the iron workers, the millwrights, IBEW in Windsor to talk about the Next Star battery plant. What did you hear from that meeting?
I was so proud to visit that training facility with you and to meet the representatives of all of the construction trades in Windsor, Essex, as well as national representatives of Canada's building trades. And we have worked hard, you and I, other ministers, to ensure that Canadian content, Canadian workers are maximized in the construction phase of that project. And it really puts paid to a lot of the criticisms when you see the first 500 Canadians show up for work, a permanent job at that facility. I can only say to the people in Windsor, Essex, that the future is incredibly bright because of these investments, because of the foresight of my colleagues, a dynamic partnership with the province of Ontario that has made it so we can have the automobile industry enter its new electrically generated phase and do so with the benefit of Canadian construction talent and Canadian auto worker talent that is going to be in those factories in St. Thomas, in the Honda facilities, and all of these other facilities, including the one in Windsor, for decades and decades to come. It's incredible to see that families know they can settle down in Windsor, raise a family, prosper, and pass on to their children a generational investment and a generational contribution to our economy and to the auto industry.
Thank you so much, Minister. And I just wanted to say before I turn things over, it is crazy that 2 years since we announced the battery plant investment in Windsor, Conservative colleagues still do not support that major investment in auto workers in my community, in St. Thomas, and up and down the 401. Thank you.
The silence speaks volumes, and certainly when you consider that these are investments that are being touted by Premier Ford and his ministers, and Mr. Piccini, who I deal with a lot, who are quite rightly proud of their part in this partnership. And I know that that silence speaks volumes to the people of Windsor, Essex, and the people of London, indeed.
Now you have 10.
Minister, thank you for being here. If at some point you have an opportunity to talk about the Conservative policy document updated that talks about right-to-work legislation in Canada, that would be very interesting to hear the implications for labour.
Thank you. Carlos, that concludes your time. Madame Chabot, vous la parole pour 6 minutes.
You have 6 minutes, Madame Chabot. Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being here at our very important committee. This is a committee where we recently study a bill that came in under the reign of your predecessor, preventing scabs from working during a work stoppage, and as we say in good French. It is something that gives full expression to the freedom of bargaining and many other things. First of all, there's a contract that has not been renewed. How is the minister going to work to promote the fundamental charter rights, the right to work that everybody respects and seeks to promote, the right to associate, the right to free bargaining and to strike? In 85, that was summarized like that by the Supreme Court of Saskatchewan. Since you came to your position, you have acted. You've been very busy. You have acted in two situations using unusual methods to settle. That is Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code, to break the right to strike, to force binding arbitration that could be called otherwise, that is forcing a return to work. How do you justify all this? Putting this in parallel with the freedom to bargain is being a right, a fundamental right. Is this not an obstacle to bargaining, what you've done? Our system of collective bargaining is a model that serves the world. And the rights, as you so clearly explained, the other rights to association, freedom of association, and other freedoms in the Charter, yes, that also serves as a model worldwide. That said, we had to face two similar situations that we were confronted with, where the economy was just starting to heal after a worldwide pandemic. We had to act to protect both the health of Canadians, our economy, and also the work, the jobs of many organized union members. Well, thank you. My next question will be one for the courts.
Advertisement. I just ask if it can stop being displayed. I think it's like Make Canada Great Again or something.
His staff should be over here. If that's reserved for media, I would ask the respect that is for the media, please. Thank you, Madame. I would ask you to respect the fact that it's designated for media. Please, Madame Chabot, continue.
Le temps reprend.
And, are you going to start the clock again? Did you stop the clock earlier?
Yep, my apologies for interrupting. Just to note that many of these meeting rooms do not have appropriate and full facilities for staff, and we are in a meeting room today. I was actually quite surprised that we were moved to this meeting room because we originally were in a different meeting room in West Block, which is larger, and actually staff have full ability and desks, whereas we're in this small room. There's actually issues with this room in sound that they had to turn off one of the monitors earlier. We've had issues in this room, so I was just really surprised that when we have a minister here that we're in this type of a room where our staff don't have full ability to function, and there's actually technical issues ongoing in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. I do not choose the rooms. That's House administration, as you all know. Madame Chabot, continue, and you will have your full 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Minister, I asked a question. How are you going to promote these fundamental rights that exist? In the instance of the Montreal ports, you talked about economic extinction. It's very serious from our point of view, from the point of view of the workers, the employers, and the railroads, as well as the ports. Not negotiating, no bargaining, imposing pressure. Talking about the effect on the supply chain, declaring lockouts, and then waiting for the government's response. That, in a sense, undermines negotiations. And I refer to the use of that section, which really constitutes an obstacle to free bargaining. Workers are concerned by this. That means that bargaining is meaningless now. The economic situation and what they do for that is not considered an essential service. The reasons cited were safety of the economy. That all of that is very perturbing, and I hope that you will do everything that you can to protect the legislation that exists about these laws. So to protect the labor laws that exist. I certainly respect the Canada Labour Code, and in listening to you,
Mr. Chair, we still do see that again, political advertising in the background. I just kindly ask the staff member to please adhere to those rules and find another place to sit.
Thank you. I would just remind those in the room in camera angles the rules of the House of Commons follow here. So I'd ask you to respect, you know what they are. Mr. Minister, continue.
Donc, on peut s'entendre pour ne pas...
We may not agree on the question, but I can tell you that I respect the Canada Labour Code. Section 107 is a section that is there. It was voted on and put there by the Parliament of Canada, and it is there to ensure industrial peace. I'd point out two things, Madame Chabot. First of all, how can we not hear the manufacturers, the small and medium-sized businesses, and even the labor unions in Quebec who intervene 2 days close to a massive layoff, or citizens and cities who are worried about a lack of having access to chloride to protect their citizens' water. And when you have a $1.2 billion cost, a tax, a price tag that would be attached to a shutdown, well, Madame, I have to say...
Madame Zarillo for...
Ms. Zarillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And happy to have the minister here today. I've got some questions for the minister, both on corporate greed and how it's affecting Canadians and seniors. So I'll just start by prefacing that it may not seem that corporate greed falls into the labor and seniors portfolio, but it certainly does. I think about the ILWU Workers Local 514, who have been talking about Dubai Ports World, and the fact that in Australia, they haven't been paying their taxes. And the port workers here are asking, is the same thing happening in Canada? They know that DP World, Dubai Ports World, owns a majority of the ports out in Western Canada, and they know that they've been reported as dodging taxes in Australia, and they certainly want to know if they're dodging taxes here, and there's no transparency into that in Canada. I'm interested to know what the minister thinks about the lack of transparency in relation to corporate greed and how it affects labor in Canada.
I obviously, for privacy and other reasons, I'm not privy to tax information for individuals or corporations, but I do expect that Canadian laws and tax laws are respected at all times. I can say more generally with respect to the West Coast ports, we had a major work stoppage in the summer of 2023.
I'm sorry, I have very little bit limited time, and I do want to go on this theme of corporate responsibility and ethics, and as it relates to Revera. So Revera, the privately owned by the Public Sector Pension Investment Board, which is a Canadian Crown corporation and one of Canada's largest public sector pension funds, and the excessive and preventable COVID-19 deaths that happened at Revera's Canadian facilities. I wanted to say, Minister, that this is related to corporate culture, greed, and the move away from caring for people into trying to make money. So I'm looking at two reports here. One is called Revera Living, Making a Killing. It was done by the Center for International Corporate Tax Accountability and Research. And it says that Revera, a private corporation, is operating in the UK and has shown a pattern of aggressive corporate tax avoidance and corporate conduct, a lack of ethical corporate conduct in Canada. I also have a report here that was done by the Center for International Corporate Tax Accountability, and CUPE has raised this one about the Canada Public Pension Investment Board financial and ethical failures as they invest in long-term care. This one is in France, where millions of dollars were lost, but also care for seniors was absolutely devastating. So this is important because this is housing for seniors. This is protection for seniors. And we have two of Canada's pension plans putting profit before people. So I'm interested what you think about this, because CUPE themselves have made 3 recommendations to the government that federal governments should prohibit pension funds, including CPPIB, from investing in long-term care, that private long-term care facilities should be returned to the public sector, and that the federal government should publicly review the Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board Act's requirement regarding the board's risk management. And I would also say that the federal government needs to also review PSPIB for their compliance to their own ethics standards. What do you think about these investment boards and the way they're operating and how they're putting profits ahead of seniors?
Well, thank you for that question, Ms. Zarillo. I would start by saying that long-term care providers across the country provide invaluable services to seniors, to people with disabilities. Canadians, I think, would join with you in saying they did not and will not accept the conditions that were on display across that sector during the height of the COVID pandemic. People in long-term care deserve safe and quality care, and we're going to continue to work with provinces, territories, and the sector to ensure Canadians receive the highest quality of care. I am aware of the allegations that you made. These facilities are subject to licensing, inspection, indeed the laws of the provinces where they operate. They do not.
Thank you, Minister.
They don't operate in federal
jurisdiction.
jurisdiction. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that what I'm talking about here is a culture in our investment boards, not ours, the government's wholly owned subsidiaries, so only owned by the government, wholly owned crown corporations, a culture of putting profits against people, and it's affecting seniors, their lives, not just in Canada, but in Europe. We have here in the United Kingdom and Europe, where they have decided that they're going to look after their profits ahead of people. I want to know what you think about the corporate culture. What we have here is a corporate culture problem, Minister, that's killing people.
I think what I think what is required are robust standards, licensing requirements, indeed laws in those jurisdictions that make sure that our seniors are protected, are well looked after, and can count on a day-to-day basis the kind of care that they're getting.
Thank you,
do
Madame
you
Zarillo.
think that-
Madame Zarillo, your time has gone over a good bit. Ms. Gray, 4 or 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, Food Banks Canada says food bank access has increased 90% the last 5 years, and seniors are the fastest growing group. Feed Ontario says the number of seniors accessing food banks has roughly doubled in 6 years. The Central Okanagan Food Bank in my region now serves thousands of seniors as food bank demand increased 59% in the last 2 years alone. So as the Minister for Seniors, have you gone to the Prime Minister voicing your concerns on the cost of living crisis that has increased food bank usage for seniors?
What I would, of course, any one person needing to rely on the services of a food bank is one too many, and we must all devote ourselves to eradicating poverty for every age group in this country. And in my case, obviously, my particular area of concern is seniors. I would point out that seniors' poverty has come down in this country. I talked about the numbers in Quebec, but we can talk about across the board reductions in seniors' poverty in Canada, such that seniors are less likely to live in poverty than the average Canadian. We should all, that was not always true during my lifetime. That is currently the fact.
Your time. Thank you. Given the ongoing cost of living crisis for seniors, do you believe now is the time to be raising taxes like the carbon tax on groceries and fuel that will be coming this April?
I certainly don't believe it's the time to be voting against dental care. I don't believe it's the time to be voting against increases, as your party did, to various benefits for seniors.
The question was on increasing taxes, Minister.
I'm talking about providing direct, tangible financial benefits to seniors
you're increasing
that
costs
your
for
party
seniors,
has
Minister.
opposed systematically for our entire time in
That
government.
wasn't the question, Minister. My next question is, over the last 9 years of your government, thousands of union jobs supporting families have been lost in the forestry sector, especially in British Columbia. And a report by BC forestry workers showed almost 4,000 sawmill workers lost their jobs 2018 to 2023. And this September alone, 500 jobs were lost from sawmill closures in Vanderhoof and Fort St. John in British Columbia. So as a Labour Minister, are you concerned about the loss of these union forestry jobs?
Indeed, and that's why we wanted to make sure that our supply chains and our logistics in this country provided certainty for our forest products exports, for OSB, for softwood lumber, for other forest products. British Columbia is an incredible world leader in forestry practices and provides some of the best forest products in the world. We should be very proud of those workers. We need to continue to invest in that sector, and we need to continue to make sure it's an important part of the Canadian economy. We should all be proud of
Minister,
British Columbia and its forestry industry.
Well, Minister, your government has been in government for 9 years with 3 U.S. administrations, and you haven't secured a softwood lumber agreement that the previous Conservative government secured back in 2006. So have you met with the International Trade Minister to fight for the importance of a softwood lumber agreement to protect forestry union jobs that are being lost?
Yes.
Okay. When were those meetings?
We have them regularly.
Okay, great. Can you table for the committee the meetings that were specifically related to you fighting for forestry workers, meeting with the Minister of International Trade?
Sure, I'll do that right now. We are seatmates in the House of Commons, and we talk every single day.
Well, casual conversations aren't the same as you and your department getting together and you fighting for forestry workers and setting up meetings,
We speak every single day about softwood lumber and about that dispute, and I can tell you that that minister is seized with this issue and wants to get a fair deal for the Canadian forest industry.
Well, after 9 years, I would say that hasn't happened, and it's been an absolute failure. So
I would ask
fighting hasn't.
I would ask what have
really
you
achieved
done
that.
to go meet with Congress people in Washington State or other places who are defying rulings of World Trade Organizations and others and putting up these phony
Minister, again,
disputes.
you've been in government 9 years, and you've had 3 U.S. administrations, and these are really serious to have these job losses. My last questions here relate to, in September 22, the Ministry of Natural Resources Just Transition Plan, which states there'll be an elimination of 2.7 million jobs in agriculture, energy, manufacturing, construction, and transportation. So have you done analysis on how many union job losses these would be, and also union versus non-union, and comparing pay, pension, and benefits to any type of reskilled jobs that might occur?
I don't believe those numbers, and I think they're phony.
Oh,
Great, your time is
Wow,
up.
government's-
Mr. Collins for 5 minutes. Mr. Collins?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and Minister, welcome to the committee. Some days it's very difficult to listen to some of the questions the Conservatives ask, both here at the committee and in the House, when they pretend to support unionized workers. One thing I'm aware of is history. And representing my constituents in the province of Ontario, I think back to the days of Mike Harris and the Common Sense Revolution, when the tens of thousands of unionized employees took to the streets of Ontario because he undermined the collective bargaining rights of those workers. History also reminds me of, most recently, Premier Ford and his 1% cap with government officials. Again, legislation from a Conservative government that completely undermines the rights of unionized employees. And of course, we don't have to look too far back in history to the leader of the opposition, who was in my community not too long ago as part of his Make Canada Great Again tour, courting unionized employees and officials. And no mention, of course, to two bills, Bills 377 and 525, that are probably some of the most anti-union legislation that we've seen to date. So there's a common theme here with one party, both at the provincial and the federal level. And so it's hard on days like today to listen to some of these questions when they pretend to stick up for unionized rights and unionized employees. Can I get your take on that?
Yeah. Look, the people of Ontario, I know, shudder when they hear those two words that Mr. Harris used to so often evoke, and now we're hearing it again. What union members who I know understand is that this is a party that proposes to emasculate the Canada Labour Code, to emasculate workers' rights, and one can only rely on their own words. In the Conservative Party, not the Progressive Conservative Party, obviously, but in the Conservative Party platform, you have Section 17.4 supports right-to-work legislation to allow optional union membership, including student unions. That's very specific language. That says to me that the Conservatives, under Mr. Poilievre, who was a boorish and vocal advocate for union-busting legislation in the past, the ones that you talked about, would again return to this playbook of union-busting, of requiring unions to unilaterally disarm in front of employers, to requiring unions to cease advocating for social justice, and indeed providing options so that workers would not have to join a union in unionized workplaces. That would be a 100-year pullback on the accomplishments of the Canada Labour Code and other labour codes across this country, and unions are quite right to fear it.
Thanks, Minister. Mr. Chair, I'll cede the rest of my time to my friend and colleague, Mr. Cota.
Peter's going to, yeah.
Mr. Fragiscatos.
A lot of generosity on this side of the table, Mr. Chair. No, you've touched on it, Minister, but could you go into it a bit more on the implications of what the Conservatives have in this official, again, clear as day, official policy document, page 6, updated as recently as September 23. What would right-to-work legislation mean for unions and workers in Canada? What would the consequences of that be?
Well, it would mean that in any given industry under federal regulation that union membership would be optional, that you would have non-unionized workers allowed to work beside unionized workers, or have no unionized workers in what were previously unionized workplaces. Right-to-work legislation is the kind of legislation you see in places like Alabama and Mississippi and places where they want to keep unions away because they don't like the kinds of things that unions advocate for. Good paychecks, leave, sick leave, safety, and occupational practices that favor workers and protect them and make sure they're well paid. Conservatives are against that. They're against it in Mississippi and they're against it in Canada. Apparently, it's written right here, black on white.
10 seconds, I'm fine, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fregascalis. Madame Chabot, pour 2 minutes et 30.
You have 2.5 minutes, Madame Chabot. Thank you very much, Chair. To the Minister responsible for seniors, there's a bill that's very important, Bill C-319, which is about equal treatment for persons who get the OAS and the age limit from 67 to 65. It would represent a change which would no longer have penalties involved for seniors. We looked at that, and the committee was unanimous on the bill. The bill was passed unanimously. My question to you is a very simple one. Do you think it's important to give a royal recommendation to that, to attach a royal recommendation that is missing from that private member's bill? I think it's always essential to protect our vulnerable seniors. That is what this government has always done and seeks to do in the future as well. I've always been perplexed, and I think you might agree, when the Bloc on the one side, on the one hand, recommends a change like that, but then on the other hand, votes against, systematically votes against any type of support for that we wanted to give seniors. We've set up a dental plan that and there are thousands more than you. This is false, Minister. No, you know full well that that when we vote in the House, we don't vote line by line supply. So you're not in favor of the dental plan, Madam? I'm just asking you, Mr. Minister, the question, and I have the power to question today on a specific issue. Are you ready to support Bill C-319 for the fairness in the old age security for our seniors and to attach a royal recommendation to it? Madame Chabot, when you have the support, the chance rather, to support seniors with thousands of dollars in dental care involved, you didn't do it. Mr. Minister, I know you're trying to deflect the question, Minister. You are deflecting the question, Madam. All over.
For 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. I wanted to go to the Minister just about elder abuse and the definition in the criminal code. But I just want to first just reiterate to the Minister how concerned I am about the investment choices of the Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board and the Public Service Pension Investment Board. And I would ask the Minister to work with his colleagues to review their ethics standards and really what are they investing in and how it might be hurting people. In the mandate letter, Minister, there was a point about continuing to work with the Minister of Justice and Attorney General to strengthen Canada's approach to elder abuse by finalizing the national definition. And I'm really interested in this because I have had a number of seniors come to my office who have been robbed of their retirement savings. It's being called scams in the media. It's not. They're being robbed. and they have no recourse. There is no ability for them to regain their money. And I have a person in my riding, in my community, that came to see me recently, and he's lost almost $600,000, all of his retirement. He's just retired and feels that he's going to have to go back to work. So could you give us an update on what is happening with the finalization of the definition, and are financial crimes listed under elder abuse?
So as my colleague knows, there's no official definition of elder abuse in the criminal code, and for my part, that's something that needs to change. And indeed, my mandate letter describes a requirement for me to work with my colleague, the Attorney General, Minister of Justice, on that very initiative. What I can say is that we've all had the kinds of heartbreaking stories in our constituencies that the member describes. It is patently unacceptable, and indeed the law requires further precision, and we're going to continue working in that direction. I do want to point to a couple of measures, though, outside of that specific initiative. The Tenant Protection Fund and the Blueprint for a Renter's Bill of Rights, which will help with seniors who face rent eviction and sometimes the kinds of abuses that are perpetrated on them by landlords. That is a significant component of the kinds of elder abuse that you describe, Ms. Arillo. And we're going to, I think, as a society, have to continue to come to grips and confront elder abuse and make sure that it's banned in all its forms, and that we continue to work for a future where seniors don't have to worry about these things.
Thank you, Madame Zarillo. Mr. Seebeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, you inherited the previous minister's letter from the Prime Minister. And in that letter, it says, with the support of the Minister of Public Safety, the Minister of Public Services and Procurement, and the Minister of International Trade, introduced legislation to eradicate forced labor from Canadian supply chains. That's from 2021. I asked the Minister of International Trade at committee in 2022 what's been accomplished. The answer was zero. You've seized absolutely zero goods made with forced labor from China. Now, contrast that with $3.62 billion seized by the United States. This is an abysmal failure by you, by your government, to crack down on forced labor, which has resulted in the ability of China to continue to use forced labor. You understand what forced labor is, right? They are abusing people, and these goods are coming into Canada untouched. What do you have to say to Uyghurs who are being used for forced labor about your complete and absolute catastrophic failure to do anything to stop these goods from coming into Canada?
Well, of course, this Parliament passed Bill S-211, which deals with it. The Minister of International Trade has carriage of the forced labor file. Canada intends to be a leader in this sector. And what I would say to you, Mr. Seebeck, is go back, talk to your House leader, end the filibuster.
No,
so that Canada
No, I'm sorry. The mandate letter says you're responsible for introducing legislation. You're talking about a piece of legislation by a backbench MP, okay, who made an optional reporting requirement. This is your robust action to crack down on forced labor? That is an embarrassing answer. The United States has seized $3.62 billion worth of goods. They're making a difference. This country has seized nothing. And your answer is some backbench member's bill is your response to this very serious issue?
No, it's the law of Canada, and I dare you to talk to John McKay, who knows more about this issue than I dare say that you do, and about world practices, about his bill. I think that I would enjoy a debate between you, Mr. Seebeck, and John McKay.
I suspect you know very little about the bill,
issue.
because here's what it does. It requires a new website to be created to track results of voluntary information. This is your robust action. Look, Minister, this is an embarrassment, and you stand here and try to defend it as even more of an embarrassment. The United States has an entities list where they have all of the companies that they know use forced labor. and those companies cannot ship goods into Canada. Does Canada have an entities list?
Canada intends to be a world leader on the issue of forced labor.
and the check's in the
And
mail.
you know what you need
This
to
does
do? You know what you
nothing
need
for
to do, Mr.
Uyghurs
Seaback?
suffering from forced
You know what
labor.
you need to do is you need to stop gaslighting Canadians.
No,
by telling them
you're
by
gaslighting
telling a
Canadians by
minister,
pretending you've done something.
and my
You've
colleague,
done
the
nothing.
Minister of International
You've created a
Trade,
voluntary
we're working-
website.
We are working on
Excuse me, Mr.
the
Chair,
issue
point
of
of
forced
order,
labor, and we
Mr.
intend to
Chair.
respect our commitment. But here we walk into
Chair, point of
Parliament
order.
every day to hear you talking against your own motion. This is ridiculous. It's absurd. Canadians expect that we act on issues
Where's
with
the bill?
respect to labor in
Where's the
Canada,
bill?
with respect to
If
seniors in
Parliament's
Canada.
obstructing,
and we-
where's the bill?
We
Point of
expect,
order.
we expect
no
that the
bill.
Conservative
Mr.
Party
Chair.
of Canada
got no bill
stop
tabled on this.
gaslighting
Order.
the people of Canada with your phony, fake filibuster.
Order.
Point of order.
Order. What is?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to bring to my attention that he's yelling into the microphone. This really does impact our translators.
Okay,
and
thank
so-
you, Mr. Kuzma. Yes, I will. The member has the right to question as he chooses, but please respect the translation services. Mr. Seaback, you have an hour. You have a minute and
I'd
10
like an hour.
seconds. We don't have that much time.
Minister, you have not tabled a bill. The Minister of Labour or the Minister of International Trade, your government, has not tabled a bill. Canadians have no idea if they're purchasing goods made with forced labor. The United States has an entities list. You could copy that list and cut down on the number of products made with forced labor in this country in a second. You haven't done it. The standard in the United States is companies have to prove their goods are not made with forced labor, okay? That makes it very difficult for those things to come in. Your government set the standard in Canada that CBSA has to prove the goods were made with forced labor, which is why nothing gets seized. Why would you set the threshold so impossible for goods to be seized so forced labor ends up in our supply chains?
Well, as you know, this government has worked, consulted heavily, already passed a bill, and
It's not a government bill. That's not true.
well, I'm sorry, but it's the law of Canada now, Mr. Seaback.
That
I don't know.
has a website created.
I don't know if you're aware, but we have this law. It's S211. The government is continuing to work on enhancements and improvements to that, but your party
Tough action
stands up
that
every
Uyghurs
day,
will appreciate.
stands up every day and filibusters
But there's
Parliament
no bill
so
that
that
you're
we cannot
talking
get.
about.
It's very hard
There's
to
no
take.
bill.
It's very hard to take you seriously when you won't allow the government to present bills that Canadians are asking for.
You don't have a
your
bill
time
on
is
this.
over. Thank
You're
you,
just,
Mr.
it's all
Seaback.
theater.
Mr. Collins, you have 5 minutes or whatever's left.
Well, after that exchange, I'm almost tempted to cede my time to Mr. Seaback, Minister. Minister, you know, part of the Make Canada Great Again agenda is to fix the budget, right? You've seen the bumper stickers out there. And part of that, as we know, I think a big part of that is going to be cuts to social programs. You listed in your opening many of the programs that we've implemented, our government's implemented to help seniors. Many of the affordable housing programs that we have that are our first in 30 years go a long way to get seniors off the affordable housing wait lists in many communities across the country. You talked about reinstating the age of retirement in terms from 67 to 65, and of course the Leader of the Opposition was a part of that process in terms of cutting support for seniors. And then you've talked about the dental plan that's gone a long way to assist seniors with improvements in that area. And so, you know, no one has the Leader of the Opposition hasn't been very clear in terms of what social programs he would cut if he was to become Prime Minister. But I think we have a sinking suspicion of what that list includes, and probably includes almost everything that you rhymed off at the beginning of the meeting. Can you talk about that in terms of you know, what a Conservative government would do to the programs that we've implemented, not just for seniors, but Canadian taxpayers across the country?
Well, I think Canadians, and especially Canadian seniors, have a right to fear the worst. I can only base myself on what they've just done in terms of their proposals on housing, where they propose to withdraw all federal supports for housing in this country. It's hard to listen to Conservatives talk about housing when they proposed to take the means for the government to address the housing issue away from the government. So indeed, Mr. Collins, I think Canadian seniors have a right to be worried. Here's a list of things that they voted against. that seniors have come to count on in this country. We reversed the age of eligibility for OAS from 67 back to 65. Mr. Harper went to Davos, you'll remember, the World Economic Forum, and talked to all of the folks in Davos about how he would adjust and cut pensions for seniors with the folks in Switzerland. He did not choose to do that in Canada. We thought that was wrong. We reversed it. The Conservatives voted against that. We increased the OAS by 10% for those 75 plus. Conservatives voted against that. So I think Canadian seniors have the right to assume that the OAS enhancements will be coming back 10%. GIS increased by $1,000 a year, decreasing seniors' poverty, as I outlined earlier. We increased the GIS earning exemption by over 40%, allowing seniors who wish to earn a little bit of extra money without being penalized on the benefits that they receive. Conservatives voted against that, and seniors have the right to assume that that would be taken away from them. We improved the Canada Pension Plan for future retirees. Conservatives call that a tax. I call it investing. When I make a pension contribution, I call it investing and saving for my future. Conservatives call that a tax. One presumes and one is allowed to assume that they're going to take that away. We invested $90 million through the Age Well at Home initiative. Conservatives voted against that. $70 million for New Horizons. Conservatives voted against that. And of course, the largest single expansion of Medicare in the history of the program, the Canada Dental Program. Conservatives voted against that. This is going to help low-income seniors today. Conservatives, the Bloc, both voted against that. Shame on them, and I think Canadians have the right to be worried that all of those things would be taken away, if only because Conservatives opposed their implementation.
Agreed. Mr. Chair? No, that's fine. I'll put it in the bank.
We're over with that. Thank you, Mr. Minister. We're a little over the hour. We'll suspend while we transition to the last hour. So thank you, Minister, for appearing before HUMA today on this issue. We will suspend for 3 minutes. Committee members, welcome back to the second hour of this particular meeting. And as you are aware, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on October 8, 2024, the committee is resuming its study of workers in the seasonal industry and the employment insurance program. I would like to welcome back, and which one? Miss Mandy Simons? Ms. Simons, welcome back, and thank you for being available again. We had issues with sound the last time, and this time I'm told we're okay, as well as Ms. Tulk Lane, who was unable to attend the last meeting. Each of you will have 5 minutes in your opening statements. I will start with Ms. Tulk Lane for 5 minutes, and then we'll go to you, Ms. Simons. So, Ms. Tulk Lane, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. This is my first time appearing before a committee, so I thank you. It's been interesting to watch the last hour. I'm the CEO of the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce. For those of you that aren't familiar with provincial chambers, I represent Newfoundland and Labrador, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. And my job differs from grassroots chambers. I serve 90 chambers and boards of trades. So it's interesting getting to work with all them, and we have a reach of over 16,000 businesses within our membership across Atlantic Canada. I'm not an expert on the employment insurance system. It's a complex system that's been around for a long time. But what I do believe I'm an expert in, or what I do know, is after working with small to medium-sized businesses over many, many years, that they really can't take on any more financial increases. We know that one of our top 3 areas, policy areas, is talent and labor, securing good talent and labor. So the employment insurance system is of great importance to the chamber network and to the membership and the small businesses that they serve. We are not recommending that any blanket changes be made to the employment insurance system as it pertains to seasonal workers. We really believe that seasonal workers are a special case, and they're so important to Atlantic Canada and many of our rural, remote areas. And I think we really need to look at how we're supporting them and change the narrative and the story on seasonal workers and find solutions that really help them. So few other things I just want to share with you that we've been hearing from employers as it pertains to the EI system and what changes would be made for seasonal workers. As I stated, they're critically important. However, employers would not want to see any increases to premiums, especially the smaller businesses right now are struggling to even stay alive. And as I mentioned, finding that labor is critical. So for us, when we look at seasonal employers, they're so important. Employees are so important to these small businesses. We're talking fishing, farming, and tourism in the Atlantic region, that we really need to find a way to continue to link the employees with the employer and come up with some creative solutions on how we can do that. But again, making sure we're not making blanket changes to the system, because we're looking at a small group of people here that are repeat users. So we've got to figure out what that looks like for seasonal workers and how we talk about their importance and what they mean to the economy. I have also shared a number of different solutions and ideas that I hope that the committee can take a look at as we, again, talk differently about this. Also, I'd like to offer our network of 90 chambers, as you continue this conversation, for us to be there as a support, and how can we help change this conversation and feed in whatever way possible. So thank you so much. I'll open the floor for questions.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Tulk-Lane. Before we do that, we'll hear from Ms. Simons for 5 minutes, and then we'll go to questioning. Ms. Simons, you have the floor for up to 5 minutes. Ms. Simons, I believe you're on mute. Could you just unmute yourself? There you are.
Sorry.
Oh, good. No.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mandy Simmons. I am president of Southern Nova Scotia Seasonal Workers Alliance, and I am a seasonal worker. I am a single person, and I try to run my home on my income as a seasonal worker. The life of a seasonal worker is very difficult, worrying about paying bills. Will you get enough hours, make enough money for when you are off work, and have decent employment insurance? How much work will there be this season? Weather and other factors such as price at the wharf catches help determine how much work there will be. I live in an area where seasonal work and there is not much else for jobs. It is important. It is almost impossible to buy a home, a new car, when the bank looks at your income and you're a seasonal worker. The problem with unemployment insurance is the best weeks, also known as the divisor, is way too high for someone making $15,000 a year, where 20 is the divisor and the 50% of 15,000 equals around $412.50. Then you have to take income tax and get a little over $300 a week. For 630 hours, you get employment insurance for 17 weeks. And if you qualify and get the extra 5 for a total of 22 weeks, there is no guarantee on how much work you will have during the season. There may be lots of work at one plant, and then again, you may have to work at 2 or more plants in order to get enough insurable hours for employment insurance. Thank you.
Did you conclude, Mr. Simmons? Madame
Yes.
Simmons? Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we will begin the first round, but before I do, I want to welcome MP Van Popta to the committee, and we will begin with Ms. Gray for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. My first questions are for Atlantic Chamber of Commerce. In March of 2024, your organization called for the end of the Liberal carbon tax, and your organization reported that, quote, 2/3 of Atlantic Canadian businesses report experiencing negative consequences, with the majority indicating the impact of the carbon tax is extremely negative, unquote. How has the carbon tax impacted some of your seasonal employers, particularly those in sectors that are reliant on heavy fuel use?
Thank you, Ms. Gray. I actually didn't prepare to speak to the carbon tax today. I was really focused on the seasonal workers. So I'd have to, if I can share information at a later date, I'd be pleased to do that.
Great, thank you very much. And also as part of that, if speaking with your with the members of your organization, how those cost impacts really do impede the ability of hiring, because of course the reason why this is relevant is because any time that a business has increased costs, that makes it more difficult for them to invest, and in particular to hire more or to give more hours to workers. So can you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, I'd want to reach out to the members and specifically ask and try to get evidence from this, as it's not something. But you're right, as I mentioned, really any cost right now, even if it was a slight increase, as we talk about, as it affects premiums, but anything that can be done for savings for small businesses is something right now. It's so important versus anything that is going to add a burden. And again, when we talk about these small employers and we talk about an employee and the cost, some of them have 10, right? It's just not that one employee. We're going to times that by 10 then. So it makes it that much more difficult when they're looking at the end of the day what they're bringing in, especially in the tourism, I would say, or restaurants. These businesses we're hearing are struggling a little more than some others right now when we talk about seasonal and tourism. But I will definitely be able to dig into that again and compare it and find out how they're doing when it comes to the carbon tax that we spoke out against. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. And as also as part of that, and this really goes to, we're talking about workers today, we're talking about seasonal workers, but any time that a business, in particular a small business, has less resources, it makes it more difficult for them to expand or to hire more people. So just how businesses are doing really is really relevant to this conversation. So I wanted to ask you, we've seen reports from other organizations on how many small businesses are carrying more debt than they did before the pandemic, and they haven't been able to pay off debt. And in fact, many businesses, especially those in the tourism industry, are not back at the same level of sales and revenue that they were, pre-pandemic. So in addition to having this more debt, they're not able to pay off the debt, which means then they can't also then spending money on marketing or hiring more people. So can you maybe speak to that?
Yes, I can. And I'd like to share some of the comments you just made. It also speaks to the bigger problem that we've been talking about from all the chambers across Canada and productivity. So when a small business is worried about, who's going to open the doors this morning, or if that staff person didn't come in, or labor, they can't focus on being more productive, implementing innovative solutions. The other thing they're not able to even get to or talk about, which is something we're trying to educate them on, is how to scale up to export. So if they can't even take care of, keeping the doors open, or they're struggling with labor, having these other conversations about becoming more productive, putting more investments into digitalization and innovation, and thinking about exporting, it's completely off the table. So you're right. I mean, these discussions around employment insurance and finding labor and good labor and making sure we don't disincentivize work for people is going to be critical to grow our small businesses and help the ones we have be able to scale up and become more productive. So it really is truly all tied together, and every penny counts when we're talking about these SMEs.
Thank you for that. Talking about the tourism aspect as well with many of your members, we've seen how many people, many Canadians are not able to travel as much and maybe have those summer vacations, or maybe not even from a tourism perspective. They may not be going to restaurants as often and may not have as much disposable income. Of course, we see record numbers going to food banks. We see how people are having a tough time just to afford basic necessities. And of course, when you're having a tough time with that, you're not able to go out and have that disposable income. So can you speak to that as to how many of your members are seeing how the cost of living crisis is continuing to affect families and continuing to affect their businesses and their revenue?
For many, many years, and I will go before, pre-pandemic, we were talking a lot in the Atlantic region about extending the tourism, extending the season and creating a shoulder season. And now all you have to do is take a look at many of your restaurants and tourism operators. They're actually not even open. I don't know if you've noticed on Mondays and Tuesdays, and they're really just focused on that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And again, this all comes back to being able to stay open, the cost of doing business, and having the labor that you need. So I think it's as simple as that. When we're not seeing people with that extra little bit of money in their pocket, they're not even able to travel at home. We talk about staycations, not even seeing that anymore. People aren't able to even do staycations or stay within Atlantic Canada, or even travel within my own province of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's too hard. Gas, the price of gas. So the businesses are suffering again from people not being able to have any disposable income. So they're definitely feeling it, and they're trying to be more innovative, but it's definitely a challenge.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
Back to the carbon tax like we were talking
Thank you,
about.
Ms. Gray. Mr. Kuzmarchuk for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I wanted to say thank you, Ms. Simons, for coming here today, testifying in front of committee, and bringing forward your experience, your lived experience as a seasonal worker, and the concerns of the Southern Nova Scotia Seasonal Workers Alliance. I think it's important that we focus today on hearing from workers, talking about seasonal workers, and talking about employment insurance. So I think it's important that we focus on that, and that this remains the focus of our discussions here today. I also just wanted to take a second and thank my colleague, Madame Chabot, for bringing this study forward, for spearheading this important study, for bringing us here together. This is an important topic, an important issue. So I just wanted to say thank you to my colleague for bringing this important conversation to light. Ms. Simons, there are 350,000 seasonal workers across Canada. Many of them are concentrated in Quebec, in the Atlantic provinces. I wanted to ask you just a general question. What are the most pressing challenges that seasonal workers face regarding employment insurance?
The most pressing is the hours and the divisor. Our hours are 630. They don't go below that, and they will go to 700 off and on. Depends on the EI rate, which is posted every month, like it's reviewed and stuff. So, I mean, we don't make 25,000. I don't make 25,000. I made working 2 lobster pounds, juggling. Like, you don't work 8 to 5. I go in 2 o'clock in the morning to 1. 8 o'clock, I might drive a half hour to another, trying so hard to make sure that I got enough hours to make my EI last. And to get max EI, I need to make around $26,000. Max EI is a dream. It's not reality. So people that make 26,000 and above, they get more money. And the person that really needs the money will get less. And it's no fault of their own, because the weather or different things, you don't get work every day. Well, it's frustrating. It's hard to explain, but but it's just difficult. The hours, the divisor, they call it the best weeks. Ours is 20, and we're getting 55% of our earnings divided by 20. That's a high divisor. The people that get the less money, like me, that really need it to run my own home, I'm not ever going to get max, no matter how hard I try. And other seasonal workers, like, I'm a volunteer advocate for seasonal workers, and I'm in with groups from New Brunswick, Quebec, across Canada. And we do Zoom meetings and stuff and compare notes, what's going on there and stuff. And just keep fighting and keep hoping that someday this reform that was promised years ago, which I was in on the consultations, isn't a pipe dream and it becomes a reality. Thank you.
Ms. Simons, I so appreciate your testimony. I think you're doing a fantastic job of giving us an insight into what seasonal workers experience. Would you mind just talking a little bit about what an average day for you looks like as a seasonal worker, what industry you work in, and maybe just give us a sense of what a week could look like in your world?
An average. I work in the lobster industry. Southern Nova Scotia mainly it's a big part of the economy. Dumping Day is coming next week, and you'll see the MPs, MLAs out there wishing the lobstermen, a safe trip, prosperous trip. And I always post and remind them about the seasonal workers in the lobster pounds. Without them, lobsters do not move. They're not worth anything. If we don't go in, so my typical day starts, I might start 3 a.m. I know the day before, and I've gone to work at 3 a.m. till 6. Then I'll grab a coffee at McDonald's and drive a half hour and text my boss at the other place and tell him I'll be to sleep in your parking lot, grabbing a half hour sleep just before I start my next job at the other lobster pound. And to juggle both, it's a hard thing to do when they need you and somebody else needs you. And in the off season, they say, why can't you get a job? So my season runs from the end of November to the end of May, but there is always lobsters in the pound until fall. So I might have a really busy week, and then some weeks it might be 20 hours a week.
Fair to say there's a fair bit of uncertainty in that line of work, I imagine. You mentioned yourself something I picked up on. You said there's no guarantee you will get work. Talk about that a little bit, the fact that, there's no certainty whether you might get work or not. Help us understand that.
Yeah. So lobster, there's ground fish. Quota cuts have been very, very steep in ground fishing things. So that's a big factor. If the government makes a cut, you're going to give somebody that works on ground fish less work. And for lobster, the catches drop. The bulk of the lobster is caught in the first 2 weeks. Then you have weather storms play a big part. And then after around the 1st of January, some boats might bring their traps back in because of the weather, the damage it does to the traps. The price of traps have doubled from 100 to 200 a trap. It's all cost to them as to when they can go out, the price of fuel, as to where they would go day after day. They don't do that no more.
Thank you.
And then you got, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Mr. Kuzmarchuk, Madame Shabat pour 6 minutes.
6 minutes, Madame Shabat. Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much, ladies, for being here and for your testimony. Ms. Simmons, listen, and thanks to my colleague's words, because I appreciate what he said. This is an important study for me, and you have spoke about your daily life, your routine. You have talked about the fact that it is seasonal work and what that represents in the sector that you work in. It's an important one for the economy of Nova Scotia. It is. Would you say, and I think you would agree, that the seasonal industry is a major part of the economy of your region and your province?
Yes, the lobster industry is 90% of the economy for for Shelburne County, Yarmouth County. It's a great area. And it employs a lot of jobs, between 20 to 50 workers at each lobster pound. And in my small town, last year, a lobster cannery was built, whereas one closed down 2 hours away because lack of lobster. So.
Merci. Comme plusieurs de vos collègues ailleurs.
Like some of your colleagues elsewhere, you live in a region in your province where seasonal work has an important place, a role to play. And we know that when you work in a seasonal industry with EI, there are the periods, qualification periods, we call them the black hole, but it's the qualifying period, is it's that period of time between the number of weeks worked and where you find new work. Is that a reality as well for you and the people that you represent? And so this qualifying period represents how many weeks for you?
To qualify for EI at 630 hours gives you 17 weeks of employment insurance. And if you qualify for the 5 extra weeks, so that would give you like 22 weeks. The black hole is a big reality. We have a second food bank that is in high demand. It's so sad to see, like, that people have to swallow your pride to go to a food bank. Like, things have changed so much with the downturn in the ground fishery, quota cuts, lobster catches dropping, double lobster pounds around here. Where it was, there was 10, now there is 20. So everybody gets a little work. It's frustrating that no matter how hard you try or look for other work at other places, you check job banks and there is nothing. There is no other big business within hours of here. Thank you.
Encore à vous, Madame Simmons.
Ms. Simmons, once again, I think that this is proof that we have to strengthen the EI system if we want to keep these industries in our regions and the workers that work in them. It's very important that there has to be fewer hours required to qualify, and there has to be a standard week of benefits. Just to give an example, if you have 400 hours of work, that should give you a certain number of weeks. It's guaranteed. These are solutions that I think about, but do you agree with me? And do you have any other solutions to put forward?
No, when the other groups, we always agree on 420 hours. You should be entitled to 25 weeks of EI when you put in on the minimum amount of hours. And 55% of your earnings with the cost of living the way it is now, we have to have like get 70%, get that up to 70%. The divisor at 20 is brutal. It really is. When you divide 20 into 55% of your earnings, that's way too high. I mean, like I said, max EI is a dream, and it's not a reality for many in the lobster pounds. And you struggle, and you go to food banks, and you don't travel much. You just make the best of what you have. Thank you.
Avec la... Oui, j'ai encore une petite
Do
question.
I have time for another question? With the reality that you live in, are there workers in the seasonal industry who give up and leave those jobs permanently to go find work in other sectors? And if so, what is the impact on your region?
They look for other work. Some have took CCA. It was offered free in Nova Scotia, so they took it and graduated and are out of the lobster industry. But there is only so many jobs as a CCA. And there's not many other jobs in this area or zone to go to. And lobster is a big part of the economy. So when you take the seasonal workers out, the whole economy will crash here. And it's a big area. And I mean, if we're not making money, we're not spending it. We've lost a bank, a gas station in my little town. Like, it's just the start of things to come. It's disastrous to see.
Merci, Madame Chabot.
Thank you,
We'll
Ms. Chabot.
go for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I am going to start with some questions to witness Simons. I'm interested in two areas. This is kind of a modernization project on EI. You know, it needs to be modernized. We know that. And if we're going to open it up, it would be good to have a real understanding of how gender and climate change have impacted your work and seasonal workers. And I say that because when EI was first put together, they weren't really considering that women had work or full-time work. So we know that there's many gaps. And I think about maternity leave if you're a seasonal worker. So I'm interested how that affected you differently than it might affect other workers. And then climate change, if you can just explain or describe how your work situation has changed over time with the changing climate. And you even said weather a few times. Has that changed over the years, and how's it affecting work?
So on the gender, I, as a woman, females always get paid less. So max EI is not going to happen. You have single moms and stuff, and man, it breaks your heart when you hear their stories, but we don't get as much work as a male does, whereas they go unload boats and we don't. We're just mostly in the pounds and stuff. Even though we go work just as hard as the men at times. We get paid less. We'll get less EI for less time. On the climate change, yes, the storms are more frequent in the winter and stuff, which means if the boats don't get out for days, you know there's not going to be any work. And it changes the habitat of lobsters. They shift a little. So they say they're shifting now to the warmer waters. So they're moving. So when the lobster starts, the catches will be down again. They were down, I think, 20% last year. So they're looking for a little drop this year with the climate change. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. You know, I note that the majority of seasonal workers are men. Across all of Canada. I mean, obviously the Atlantic provinces have the most seasonal workers, but what are the conversations that happen in the PANs around the needs of single parents, women? Like, what are those conversations? What are the needs in relation to income supplements, income, and even EI?
The needs, they need to get more money at the EI and paying bills. So many are struggling, like with their children, and they've had school programs. People's donated money for breakfasts at the local schools and different things. But it's just stress all the time. It really is. They'll ask me, am I close to my hours? What do you think I'll get? And stuff. And when I tell them you're going to get 300 and something a week, and the rents have gone through the roof, it's hard. It really is heartbreaking. And people messaging you and asking you things like, and you got to tell them the bad news that you haven't been on a claim 3 out of 5 years, so you're not going to get the 5 extra weeks, or you're not wasn't entitled to the 4 extra that ran out in September, and things like that.
Witness Simmons, you mentioned that you were part of a roundtable or a consultation. Can you just talk a little bit about what was that consultation, the government consultation, I guess? Was that a provincial or a federal? And I wonder if you wouldn't mind letting us know if the federal government has had any consultation with seasonal workers in the lobster industry over the last couple of years that you know of.
The consultations, the Commissioner for Workers, Pierre Laliberte, who does Zoom meetings with us, he helps us seasonal workers. Like, I'm going to Moncton the 26th, and on the 27th, there is meetings with the Atlantic provinces and members of employment insurance. The consultations, we all agree, like the groups, on what we should ask for, like as a roundtable: 420 hours, 25 weeks of EI, 70% of your earnings, and a lower divisor, lower best weeks. We all agree on the same things. That was, oh my God, like 4 or 5 years ago.
And did you ever hear anything back? Was there any ever no changes? You mentioned the gender wage gap, and I just wonder, has that been discussed at the roundtable? And has there been any?
It's starting to more and more. I mean, men will get a couple more dollars than us, and they might work a little harder, but we work hard too. Nobody loves these jobs, but they're part of the economy. And when there isn't much else around, that's all there is. There's young ones coming in it all the time, and I just tell them, go back to school.
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much. Witness Tolklane, I just wanted to ask a little bit about the employers and the profile of seasonal workers for your members and for the members. What is the profile of a seasonal worker? And I'm asking on the relation of, do they need housing? Are they coming from different provinces? Are they locals? I'm really trying to get an understanding of who's working in the seasonal industry.
Sure. It's a little hard for me to speak to the businesses, as I'm almost a step removed, where my members are the chamber. So what I'm hearing is anything they feed up to me that they're hearing. But I can definitely tell you, when we talked about, I mentioned our priorities, labor being one. One of the other top ones that have creeped up is housing. So we're seeing around employer circles and employers' tables more social discussions now. I mean, housing and healthcare are top on our agendas. So it's definitely quite a switch from a decade ago when you'd sit in a room with employers and you're talking about different things. So housing is actually one of our top priorities from an Atlantic Chamber's perspective, and we're working with all the chambers and trying to figure out where we fit in as employers, because that housing piece definitely links to recruitment and retention of employees and labor. So housing, I would say, is up there. I think as an employer association, we're still trying to find our place at the table with a village of people when it comes to housing. So all I can say, it is critical, and it does affect being able to hire a staff person or recruit someone to your community when there are no housing. We do have some...
Thank you, Ms. Cirillo and Madame Tolklane. I'm sure you'll get another question where you can continue on. We'll now move to Mr. Aitchison for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Tolklane, you started to talk about housing, and you acknowledged that it is one of the big issues that your member organizations are hearing from their members. I'm wondering if you were aware that when it comes to the construction of new homes, that no one makes more money on new homes than governments at all levels, the provincial, federal, and municipal governments. Were you aware that government makes about 30% on every house?
No, I mean, I've heard it discussed. I haven't dug in or done any research on it.
Yeah. It's one of those areas where I think that we could do a lot to reduce the cost of new homes by reducing the impact of government. But I'll leave that with you, just so you're aware of it as well. I'd like to move on to Ms. Simmons. Ms. Simmons, I really appreciate what you're sharing with the committee, and it's quite moving what you're sharing with us. And as I've listened to you speak, I'm imagining the change that you've seen in your community over your lifetime and over your career in the industry and how the industry has changed. I'm wondering if you could speak a bit as well. Like you mentioned at one point, how the cost of traps has doubled and the cost of fuel has gone up. And I, of course, focus on housing, the cost of housing, all these areas. Can you speak to the cost of housing? Have you seen a big change in the cost of housing in your communities? We talk about big cities all the time, not always small communities. And so I'm curious to know if you can speak to us about the cost of housing in your community.
The cost of housing is skyrocketed through the roof. It's unimaginable. Nobody's building a new home around here anymore. I see people are starting to live more in campers. And I hope someday that's not me and a lot of people, because you can't afford the rent, you can't afford to build. So where do you go from there? It's very frustration. It's like a dead end.
Can you speak to how much rents have changed, for example? You said they skyrocketed, and no new homes are getting built. Obviously that has a massive impact on folks that are seasonally employed, as mortgages, if they have a mortgage and trying to pay their mortgage after interest rates spiked last year. Do you have any experience with any people that are in that circumstance, that are struggling to pay their mortgage?
Yes. When their mortgage renews, they don't know how they're going to handle it. Like pay their mortgage, pay their regular bills, food. Rents have gone from $500 to a one-bedroom apartment to, right now there was a couple new apartment buildings built, smaller one, $1,200 a month just the rent, and then you have your utilities. And a senior I spoke to is looking for a roommate because his is $1,200 and he's had to go back to work in order to pay the rent and the utilities.
And he's had to go back to seasonal work, I would assume?
Yes.
And so working longer just to barely get ahead, just to barely get by, I guess, not even get ahead.
Yes, he's 70 years old.
It's unbelievable. Yes. The cost of fuel, you mentioned the cost of fuel for the boats and the challenge, to keep the fleet fueled and get out there. I'm assuming it's gone up quite a bit, especially with things like carbon taxes and whatnot. Can you speak to the cost of fuel and what it costs to operate lobster boats now?
To go out on a day to set traps, which they will do Monday, weather permitting, $1,000 or more. Some boats will overload their boat, which is dangerous. Seen it before. Last winter, a guy was lost overboard. The price of traps, the price of bait has tripled. With the shortage of ground fish, which is used for bait in the lobster industry, since there isn't much of that around, the price has tripled. I wouldn't want to guess. In a month, bait, $6,000. Fuel, 10. Traps, if they get caught in a storm and don't get them in, that's more expense, bringing the traps back in when a storm's coming. You don't want them smashed and ended up on the beaches. So, yes, lobstering is very costly.
Were you suggesting that some boat captains will overload their boats because of the cost of fuel? They need to try to get more?
Sometimes, yes. I just saw picture on social media, and sometimes when I go to the wharf and I look at them boats, they're loading up now for opening day on Monday, which is another thing. It gets delayed. It was delayed a week one year that we lost work. We was late starting. So that all plays a factor into EI and hours, and weather determines a lot on when these boats go, whether it be lobsters or groundfish. There's no guarantee on how much work there is, and there's no big industry here. They're beautiful little coastal communities, but
They are indeed.
there is
They
no-
are indeed.
Thank
Yes.
you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Aitchison. Ms. Simmons, we'll now go to Mr. Kuzmierczak for 5 minutes.
Mike on. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to both of our witnesses for their excellent testimony here today. I wanted to ask, just go back really quickly to Ms. Simons. Is climate change? Do you see climate change having an impact on the lobster fishery and the seasonal work?
Yes, climate change plays a lot, like as to where the lobsters go when they molt in different stages and stuff. And are they way out in deeper water or are they in the warmer water? Like the weather, the temperature, the storms in the fall, the storms in the winter usually hit in January. And we live right along the ocean. So the wind, all of it. The boats don't get out sometimes for a week. Like I said, next Monday is dumping day, they call it, in Southwest Nova Scotia. And DFO and the government regulates as to when the boats can go out. They won't let them go out if it's blowing hard. So
I mean, we've seen changes. I thank you for that testimony. I mean, you've been there, you've seen it. We've seen, for example, the decline of northern shrimp in the Gaspé area because of the warming ocean. So would you say in your time, and I'm just curious how long you've been in the lobster sector, and have you seen changes in the climate?
I've been doing this since I was 15 years old. I am almost 61.
5 years.
So over time, I mean, I never worried about EI. I went from lobster to groundfish, back to lobster to groundfish. EI wasn't a thing. And the downturn over since the 1980s and then the 90s, it started going down. And now all we have is lobster left. And it's sad and it's scary because that is on shaky ground. The lobster moved from Southwest Nova Scotia, and then in Newfoundland and PEI, their catches went up a little bit, which in Southwest Nova, we get lobsters we're getting them from Deer Island now, and they'll get them from PEI when they open. Even though our season is 6 months, there's storms and everything, and we depend on other districts for their lobsters too.
Would you say that we ought to do something about climate change? Is it important? Is that an important factor, you think?
It is in the molten in all the stages of the lobster and the different fish. Yes, it plays a big part in where they go.
No, I thank you for that so much. Thank you so much for your testimony. Truly, it has been absolutely fantastic. I do have a question for Ms. Tolk-Lane. Just on housing, if it's okay, because I know it was raised by my conservative colleagues. The Greater Charlottetown Area Chamber put out a post that said, the Greater Charlottetown Area Chamber of Commerce welcomes recent commitments to accelerate housing development, including the announcement that the town of Cornwall has reached an agreement with the federal government to fast-track more than 140 homes over the next 3 years through the Housing Accelerator Fund. And it continues on to say, earlier this month, our chamber also welcomed the announcement that the city of Charlottetown will receive $10 million through the Housing Accelerator Fund to fast-track 300 new housing units over the next 3 years. I wanted to ask you, this is interesting because the Conservatives right now are saying that the moment they get in, the first thing that they'll do is they will axe the Housing Accelerator Fund. And it's to the point where the leader of the opposition has banned his Conservative MPs from not only advocating for the Housing Accelerator Fund, but even talking about the Housing Accelerator Fund. So I wanted to ask you, in light of what we've heard from the Charlottetown Chamber of Commerce, is the Conservative plan to cut housing funds a good idea in the context of what you said about this is an important issue of discussion?
So, thanks for the question. I want to give a little bit of context. So, I have 90 members, so it's hard sometimes to stay on top of what 90 of them are saying on social media. So I wasn't aware of their posts. They did, again, just trying to support them. What I'm going to say to this is that employers and employers groups will avail of pots of funding and money from all colors of government when it helps our members and employers. So that's as much as I'm probably going to share on that one right now. Thank you.
It's a great answer. Thank you very much.
10 seconds.
I just wanted to say again to the both of you, fantastic testimony. I really do appreciate your tremendous work on your members and really appreciate the excellent insights that you've shared with us here today. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzmarchuk. Madame Chabot, pour 2 minutes et 30 secondes.
2 minutes, 30 seconds, Madame Chabot. Thank you. Ms. Simons, thank you so much for your testimony. We see the difficulties, but we also see that there are solutions. Given your investment in this type of work, it's a beautiful area of our country, and you say that it's 90% of the economy in your region, I understand. So all this means we have to take better care of the workers in your industry and in all the industries in the sector, the seasonal employment, because it has such an impact on your economy. So thank you so much for speaking to it. There are perhaps solutions like the 5 extra weeks for the pilot project areas, the pilot project regions. We maybe could have, you know, the goal of EI is to maintain quality workers like you, and it is something perhaps a bit technical, this divisor that you spoke about. Do you have something to suggest that might correct the situation that you are experiencing with the divisor as it is set now?
The divisor, I email my MPs, I go to the MLAs in both zones, like for Yarmouth and the other one, and just keep fighting and fighting. The divisor has got to come way down to 10, just something livable, because when you divide that into 55% of your earnings, which is below 20,000, that's not a lot of money going into workers. Thank you.
Donc, lors de votre...
So, in the meeting that you will have in a few weeks' time, I imagine that these questions, like EI reform, might well be at the very heart of the discussion you will have at the meeting?
Yes, the reform, the best weeks, and the divisor. Yes, the main things. Yes.
Merci.
Thank you very much.
Before we go, Ms. Talk-Lane had to leave the meeting, so we just have Ms. Simmons with us. Madame Zerillo for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Witness Simmons. I really thank you for all of the expertise that you've shared with us today, but also you mentioned that, you know, you're talking to the next generation. And I just want to thank you for your mentorship and for your care about the work that you do in the industry that you support. I had a couple of questions about the employers. I'm interested to know how employers have changed over time and how they're doing financially. And also, are they all Canadian companies? Is it all Canadian companies, or is it going offshore?
The lobster pounds are owned by people from China, the United States, and Germany. The employers, the ones I work for, is in some of the local ones, they're great to you. We used to have meals cooked for the first 2 weeks for free. They do different things to hold on to their workers because a good worker is a valued worker. they're flexible in giving us extra work and doing maintenance or some painting around. They try to help us out as much as they can. As far as financially, the owners of the lobster pens, some are more better off than others. It depends on how much lobster you can hold in different things and how much you get on the market for them.
Interesting. So, do you have any idea of those companies, like the overseas companies, what their profits are like? Like, are they making good profits off of the labor of panners like yourself and fishers?
I would have to say China is doing really well because they bought the local bank that closed and turned it into a restaurant. And foreign workers, I don't like to talk about that too much. But anyway, foreign workers come here and they're going to get so much work. They got a roof over their head, whereas we're not guaranteed of nothing. But there's a lot more foreign workers here now.
How has that changed over time? Like percentage wise in the pans?
3 years ago, there was no foreign workers here. And now there might be around 100 foreign workers here working in the lobster pens.
All right. Well, I just I want you to know, if you're out at those conversations, please, you can say that MP Benita Zarrillo and the NDP absolutely support your ask for a divisor that is smaller. We certainly need to make sure that people can pay their rent, feed their families, and have a good quality of life. So really, really support you in the work that you do. And you can say that to anyone if it's going to help move this along, because it seems unbelievable that you'd be waiting 5 years for any movement on what we know needs to be done.
Thank you, Madame. Thank you, Madame Zarrillo, and thank you, Ms. Simmons, for your testimony today, and again for sharing your time after the difficulties, technical issues we had last time. I thank you for your very good testimony. I understand this issue well, and thank you for your advocacy. So with that, committee members, I've got 3 budgets that were circulated that I need your approval with. The first one is for $3,500 that was prepared to handle the supplementary estimates that were circulated. $3,500 for the ministerial appearances on subs. Does the committee approve $3,500? Yes. We can shut down the committee. Do we agree? $3,500. Good. I notice a favorite of Mr. Aitchison. Does the committee approve the budget of $14,500 to do this study, Madame Chabot, that we're currently doing? It is an estimate depending on where the witnesses come from. Does the committee approve the budget of $14,500? That's what the budget is, an estimate. Yes. Do we get approval of it? I'm seeing general consensus. Does the committee approve the budget of $1,250 prepared for the briefing with the president and CEO of CMHC, which is concerned on December the 10th? Mr. Aitchison?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Oh, you do? Oh, good. Thank you. And the deadline list for Bill C. Committee members, I welcome the jovial mood. The deadline witness list for Bill C-378, I believe it's your colleague, Ms. Gray. A suggestion could be Friday, November the 22nd. This would be, the committee previously agreed that each party would invite one witness. What deadline does the committee wish to set for the name of the witness for each party? November 22nd? Okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. With that, is it the wish of the committee to adjourn?
Yes.
Adjourn. Thank you, committee members. And thank you again.